Now you're going to be quiet.
Bang gavel.
Wait till we announce it. Scott, for design updates.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Tonight we're just going to walk through some of the adjustments that have been made to the, in some cases, slight adjustments to the exterior, but mostly the interior spaces that we talked about previously at some point in time, particularly specifically on Cuniff and Hosmer, taking a walk through some of the interior spaces. I'm losing my voice, so I may be calling on our team to walk through some of these spaces, just a casual walk through.
Too much celebrating yesterday?
It must have been us too much celebrating.
Just kidding.
Just as a reminder, this was the exterior that we presented back in May for the east facade of Hosmer, and we talked about making some adjustments to that, and we did show some adjustments in black and white. But then these are the adjustments, which are subtle, but they go back to the basic material palette more, pull the color previously assigned to the entry areas out, and then remove the graphic and just basically go back to the two materials. And we do have the materials. I can't recall. I don't think we've actually provided a sample of the product that we talked about that was Prodema, which is the wood product. So we'll pass those. This is the Prodema wood product. It really is wood on the surface. And so everywhere on the building that you see that wood appearing finish, it is that material. It comes in a darker color too, although we're a little bit more attached to the lighter color, and all the renderings are done in the lighter color. And then where you see the metallic surface on the building, which would be at the entries in this case, that is what's referred to as an aluminum composite panel. And we have a couple of samples of those. One is a gray painted sample, and then one is a natural, our natural stainless sample. So we haven't made a specific color selection yet, but those will give you an idea of what those materials look and feel like. And then we have a number of interior shots, and I am actually going to ask Julie to just walk through each of the spaces and tell you a little bit about where they are and some of the things you're seeing. With the floor plans that you have before you are to help you orient yourself, so don't let us talk too much without you understanding the location. In some instances, because these are most of them are just black and white wireframes, it can be a little confusing. So please stop us and ask questions if you don't know where we are in the building.
So as Scott mentioned, we have the Hosmer plans on the table. So we do have this key plan to the side here, just so you don't get lost, but they're definitely a little confusing to follow. So we've tried to set it up so that you're just sort of walking through the building. So for starters, at this K-5 vestibule entry, what we're seeing here is there's a weather-tight vestibule, and then coming into what we're seeing in the image is a security vestibule, and that just provides the option for administration to now decide if they're letting anyone directly into the building, or if we want people to check in at admin first at the admin desk, and then be permitted to continue on into that main lobby space. We're also trying to incorporate some of the lead elements. So for example, being able to have clean shoes and everything as you come in, so that would be incorporating the entry grate, which contributes to the indoor environmental quality. And then we're also exposing some of the structural elements. So that's what we're seeing here along the perimeter of the main lobby and the vestibule. And then we're also just trying to provide a lot of transparency into that main lobby so that there's very clearly a presence of, when you're walking into the school, what's happening in there, what it's all about, and then some ability to sort of get a sense of what the students are up to. When you're coming into that in from that security vestibule into the administration office, that's the view here. So we're providing kind of a larger administration desk with a higher privacy wall for work to be done behind there, but also including additional workspaces along the back in the admin office for when the desk attendant isn't occupied. We were discussing today how maybe this kitchenette area in the office could move further to the back, so it's not really the first thing you're seeing when you walk into the office. And also maybe providing a little more transparency into this space to the left, which would be sort of the administration version of a collaboration conference room. We're also trying to keep the office as open as possible so that there's enough sort of security and visibility to see who's coming in, but also being able to kind of keep tabs on what's happening in that main lobby space. And then when you leave the main office, this would be what you're seeing as you come through that main lobby. So we're starting to organize it in a way where we're using some of the finishes in a dynamic way, also incorporating some of the structure to be a little more fun and dynamic in an unusual way. So maybe that means exposing it and maintaining some sort of color or adding some signage right onto some of the structural pieces. We're also talking about what the detailing of this railing would be, which is open to above, and how that might tie into the structure that's exposed in some sort of tectonic way. We also have a lot of elements in here that could contribute to some vertical design options, so maybe we're incorporating some sort of signage piece, or this entire volume could be something a little more graphic that kind of pulls your eye up. Similarly, the elevator that you're seeing back here, we're thinking of applying some sort of custom graphic to that, so you're really starting to have some visual elements that get you excited about being in the space. We also are sort of thinking of this main lobby as the main street to a lot of the student services. So here you're seeing the entrance into the guidance and then the entrance into the nurse, and also getting views to academics beyond. And then turning around in that same lobby space, just getting another glance at the Main Street Student Services, with admin being on this side and then the student support suite being on the opposite side. We also have the ability to show some transparency up into the media center as well, to give just another glimpse of kind of what's happening inside the school and inside the academic portion. As you move through into the academic wing, we're continuing some of those ideas of the exposed structure that we'd talked about previously, and then using it in some fun ways where maybe we're supporting a table off of a column, or as in the distant part of the image, just being able to show that the storage components of the corridor can be hung from that structure as well. In terms of finishes, we're thinking of sheet vinyl perhaps, and some natural elements like wood. We also have the opportunity to incorporate some graphics on the small group areas, and also provide kind of the amenities that the students would need to perform their small group tasks, like the whiteboards and the writing surfaces. Something different that we're looking into would be bringing a similar sheet vinyl product onto the wall as a wainscot. And it's shown here, it almost looks sort of metallic, which we have some products that resemble a, sort of like a metal, but it can very easily be applied to the wall. That's what it's made for. And that essentially will provide a lot of durability without the, I guess, the cost of it being purely metal or tile.
I have a question on sheet vinyl all over these floors. Is that the way we're going today versus other ways that we've gone in the past?
So our interest in the sheet vinyl product is primarily because of its environmental, well, I guess a lot of our finish choices, we're keeping in mind that we need the environmental product declarations and the corporate sustainability reports for our lead points.
What is the expected life expectancy of something like this? That would be a concern, especially in hallways where it's not something that I've seen anywhere in the past.
Sure, it's, the sheet vinyl is really common in schools now, in that, don't think of it as like the sheet vinyl that you might see in your home. It is a commercial, 20-year product, just like a vinyl composition square tile, has the same warranty, has the same life expectancy, everything that you would get in a tile product. One of the benefits is that it has no joints, or it has many less joints in it, so it doesn't tend to pull up or dislodge like a vinyl composition tile would. And so there's no difference in life expectancy, and as Julie pointed out, then we need those kinds of products in order to meet the LEED requirements.
Paul?
Scott, are we talking actual vinyl or a marmoleum product, or?
You want to talk about something?
These would be a vinyl composition.
Composition.
We looked into having linoleum just for that additional environmental option, but with the sheet vinyl, it's something that we can actually take from the corridors into the classrooms and into the toilet rooms in the classroom, so we're able to eliminate an additional subcontractor if we wanted to go with tile instead. And something like the sheet vinyl has that durability to withstand water from the toilets, whereas the linoleum wouldn't.
And how do you maintain that? What's the finish?
What was that?
It's just like linoleum in that you don't have to, they say you don't have to wax it. Now, you could wax it. Unlike the linoleum, you can wax this product, and the manufacturers don't mind if you wax it, where with the linoleum, they say, absolutely don't wax it, although people do wax it anyway.
Yeah.
But with the vinyl, it is a product that they suggest does not need waxing, but they also don't have any requirements that prohibit you from waxing the product.
Yeah, I mean, we've been trying to get away, in the industry, we've been trying to get away from the waxing and stripping, which is caustic. So if we can avoid that, it'd be better.
That's the goal with both sheet vinyl and linoleum. The goal is that it's a non-wax finish.
Laurie?
And then when I do have an issue where I have to pull up that sheet vinyl, how now am I gonna have lines in areas where it's gonna be pulling up? How does that work?
Most of the time, what we recommend, if there is a situation where it has to come up, is we'll put various graphics into the floor. Like it won't just, even these hallways won't just be one continuous run. And so with schools that we've been involved with, if there's an area they need a patch, we just suggest they create a graphic of a completely, different complementing color and place that into the space in lieu of trying to patch in the exact same color. Because just like if you replace, even if it was tile, if you replace that, you'd be able to see that you had replaced the tile. So with the sheet vinyl, we generally recommend they do it in a graphic kind of sculptural pattern that matches everything else that goes on there. But it's not a product that you would expect to be, every few years removing and putting down again.
We're also not looking to do anything too extreme color-wise, so the thought being if the floor and the wall treatments are a little more neutral, that if over time things need to be replaced, it's not going to stand out as much.
1 second. Elodia, please, you need the microphone?
Elodia Thomas, could I just go back to Paul's comment? Are we talking linoleum or marmoleum? Because I really love that
I was
product,
saying
and I put it in my
marmol.
own house, Paul, so I'd really like you to address that question.
Yeah. The, is that that's an actual
Yeah,
manufacturer's?
it's the compressed wood product.
Yeah.
And we used it extensively in Newton, and there was no finish, and you had to get used to the dull look. And everything that they told us was maintenance-free, of course, was not. Every 2 years, you had to do a sealer on it, but it cut out washing, waxing, stripping, all that stuff that we used to do in the summer in the old days.
We could certainly do that and explore it. There are a couple of reasons that we're proposing sheet vinyl over a linoleum, and even the product you're describing is linoleum. That's just a particular manufacturer of it. We have not had good luck. It's more expensive than vinyl, and we've not had good luck with owners where we have installed it for the reason you just described. They don't like the dull finish, and then they have come back to us and said, I still have to clean it, I still have to seal it, it's not saving me a lot of time over the sheet vinyl. Whereas when we've installed the sheet vinyl, we've had owners be a lot more comfortable with that, because you can get it with more of a shine to it, and then they don't have to wax it. But we could certainly, don't get us wrong, right now in the market, most everybody is doing sheet vinyl. A few schools are doing linoleum if they have experience with that and they really like it as a product. But very few schools, unless there's a significant budget constraint, are doing the old style vinyl composition tile, just because those aren't, that's not a LEED or a sustainable material. You can't get the EPDs like Julie was describing, or the HPDs, the Health Product Declaration, on those products.
Okay, yeah, we got over the dull finish quickly when I showed the savings in labor for custodians to wash, wax, strip, and buying the chemicals and the caustic chemicals, and it was just a simple water cleanup, and it worked well. But it was a dull finish, and people need to know that.
Any other questions on this side? Go on.
We also just have, feel free to just pass this along, but it's samples of the sheet vinyl in sort of a wood tone as an example of things we're looking at, so. And then one other thing I just wanted to point out in this perspective is that you can see that one of the mechanical ducts is coming into the classrooms through the corridor here. And so we're doing a lot of coordination right now and just seeing, for example, this is conflicting with that acoustic baffle. So we're trying to come up with creative ways where we can sort of slide some of those mechanical components in between the baffles, or make them hit into the classroom at a logical location that works with a lot of the other finishes and just sort of continues to make everything appear as organized as we want it to. This is the same view, just looking back at the small group area from the other side, primarily just getting a sense of the scale and also seeing how transparent the corridors can be and providing a multitude of small group spaces within them. This is just an example of some of the level of detail we're starting to get into. So in those benches that appear here, we're thinking about what would those be made of, how do we achieve kind of an ergonomic shape that works best with the kids. And so some of those ideas are starting to be tossed around in the office. Also in the corridor, this is a closer up perspective of our concept for the corridor storage options. So what we're anticipating here is a bench system, probably like a metal mesh on a frame that's hung from the bracing that exists from the structure of the building. And the benefit of that would be when students are coming in and hanging their wet coats or backpacks on these hooks outside of the classroom, there's just really easy maintenance in being able to then come through and mop up anything that fell from the jackets onto the floor, also providing space for the winter boots under the benches. So we heard a lot about how those items are less desirable inside the classroom and take up a lot of space. So if we could get those into the corridors, that would be a much better direction. We're also thinking about how to make the storage areas obviously more aesthetically pleasing than if it was just hooks or cubbies. So we're incorporating some of the signage opportunities up there, and then we're also trying to add some acoustic elements that might be sort of more graphic, and then tying into, again, some of the geometries of the structure and the space. And again, some details on how we're considering all of those elements coming together and being hung from the actual structure. So we're really looking to not include any sort of superfluous elements and just make everything part of that overall structure of the building. This is just a view as you approach the media center on the second floor. So when we were down in the lobby talking about how it's a double height space, this is from above looking below. And you can see again, we're sort of working on how are we coordinating the structure and the mechanical, but also providing some dynamic architectural elements, and then ultimately just making it very transparent and sort of an exciting space to be in. This is that same stair lobby, and we're looking at opportunities to bring in digital displays. So this is that elevator volume again, but at each level of the stairs, we have this nice graphic wall that we could very easily release all of the software from that ARC program that could relay all the net zero information that the building is operating off of right into the lobby space. And then you also get a nice clear view into that connecting bridge from the K-5 wing over to the early ed wing. And this is that connecting bridge. So we're thinking about how to make best use of the bridge for even more than circulation space. So it's definitely wide enough that we could provide sort of a soft seating area on one half of the bridge and then still have enough room for students to walk back and forth from art or from the media center. We were also discussing today in the office how we want to sort of take a look at revising this railing so it doesn't look as dense, and we can really let the trusses and all the structure and organization that we're thinking about in the connecting bridge read a lot cleaner. This is in a typical classroom, so just wanted to show that we are providing one teaching wall on each main wall of the classrooms, including projection and marker boards, every classroom with a sink. I think we've done some presentations solely on the classrooms before, so mainly showing that the small group rooms adjacent to the classrooms, there's a lot of visibility right into it, so teachers can have the comfort of sending a small group in there. And then also the amount of storage that we'll be able to provide that runs right along the perimeter of each classroom. And then this is probably a better view of the teaching wall and the additional storage that's available. We were thinking of the sheet vinyl in the classrooms as well. And then also providing just some small student-centered storage, because a lot of the larger items are going to be stored in the hallways. There's at least a cubby for each student to put their lunch or something that they'll need during the day. We've also sort of organized the classroom into this entry zone and then the small group availability of flexible small groups within the classroom. And we've also added some elements that are a little more student-centered. So by bringing the marker board surface down lower, a lot of the younger students will be able to directly participate in some of the learning.
1 second, John?
Just had a question about the small group room.
Sure.
Is there, it looks like there's pretty open visibility between the classroom into the small group room. So is the small group room seen as something that teachers from that classroom would use, or, but there's no door into that classroom, the door is out in the hallway, correct?
Right, yeah, we were hearing that within each class, many times there's an additional parent or teacher who is taking a small group, aside from the teacher that's independently in the classroom.
Yep.
So we envision them maybe taking a student or two right into that small group room that's off of the corridor.
They would go out into the hallway to do that?
Correct, yeah.
To enter it?
Because there's an acoustical issue with
Right.
having the door there. And so after talking with the staff and administration quite a bit, and also realizing that a lot of times those spaces will be used for student support. So you'll have some portion of student support, whether that's guidance, whether that's a reading specialist, coming and taking the student into that room so they're still close to their classroom,
Yeah.
but that they have really good acoustical separation. So it's, sometimes it may be used by the instructional teacher in that classroom to allow students to work independently, but a lot of times it's also available for support services. So those students don't have to leave the classroom area, go all the way to those services and then come back.
Yeah, I would defer to kind of the teachers on this, but it seems to me that the visual nature, having it open, I can imagine circumstances where you would want that, and then maybe circumstances where you probably wouldn't want that, because it becomes a distraction between kids on both sides. So I mean, I guess they just navigate that.
It's very common to introduce blinds
Yeah.
on that kind
Yeah,
of
okay.
space,
All right.
so that they have that option.
Yeah.
Point.
Yes, Lindsay, sorry.
This is just a curious if you all have ever had the feedback about furniture choices with the sheet vinyl floors, just because right now I'm working in a school where they have sheet vinyl floors in all the classrooms, and some of their furniture choices are insanely loud and squeak and drag every time someone budges in a chair, and I don't know if it's the shiny nature of the sheet vinyl that they chose, or the chairs are a combination of the two, but it's been a thorn in everybody's side since the day the furniture moved in. So it's just something that I've noticed recently in that building.
Part of that is you do have to specifically specify the glides for the chair to be compatible with whatever the floor finish is, and if they're not, then.
And that wasn't done.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
And I would point out that the furniture that we're showing here, and I know, Lindsay, I know you're not talking aesthetically about the furniture, but we should clarify that there'll be a lot of programming specifically for furniture and equipment with the staff and administration at some point in time in the future. This just happens to be placeholder furniture that we can drop into the image.
And similarly, the design of the floor is a placeholder as well. We just wanted to own that for the design development cost estimate. There might be some element of patterning in all the classrooms. And then I think Vivian had asked about the ceiling, and our thoughts with that is we would, because the structure is framed sort of so evenly in all of the classrooms, we really want to display that logic. So we are exposing the two beams that run the lengthwise of each classroom. It's hard to see in the black and white. And then we're just dropping in ceiling clouds in more unconventional running bond pattern, just to play on the patterning and the geometry that's already occurring in the space. And by doing so, that gives us the ability to maybe we'll paint out the structure in some sort of pop of color, and then you're just seeing those ceiling clouds sort of directly fall right in between the lines of the beams there.
It's just more of an expensive
clouds versus just ceiling tiles.
It is. You have to edge the clouds around the perimeter of the ceiling section versus just the old traditional running a lay and ceiling across the classroom, certainly.
And then moving through the academic corridor, at the end of the early ed wing, we have the art classroom. And so what you're seeing here is from this ultimate corner in the building looking back towards the art room. So there's actually an entire corner of the building that'll be just full of windows for the art classroom. And then we're also breaking the space into sort of 3 zones. So we have this art gallery zone, kind of the work class zone with a projector and a spot for the class to sit on the rug, and then kind of a wet zone with a large basin sink and a lot of storage. With a lot of similar ideas to the other classrooms, exposing the structure and then dropping in the ceiling clouds.
Paul?
I just want to say that the dulled finish floors that I spoke so fondly of earlier fail miserably in the art
Not a
room.
good idea in the art room.
Just want to let you know that. We went to waxing and some sort of shiny finish. They're too porous and they hold the color from the
Also a
paints
really good point.
and all of that.
They are, and that's what Julie was mentioning earlier, where when we talked to the manufacturers of the linoleum, they said, absolutely, don't run this product into the small single-use toilets. Don't put it in the art rooms. Don't put it in any areas where it's going to get wet because of the porosity of that product.
Just a few more here. This is what we're proposing for the makerspace, and it's another space where we'll need a little more feedback from the staff, but primarily just providing some flexible workspaces, a lot of storage, and then some dynamic opportunities with windows into the media center below, and then writing surfaces. There's also a nice corner window that'll look out onto Concord Road in that space. And then inside the media center, we have a nice double height volume with a lot of natural daylight. So we're sort of envisioning the media center as still having sort of that book area, book zone, with some flexible small group areas, but also having sort of a digital zone for when the classes come in and use the laptops in there, and then plenty of acoustic treatments. And then this is just a view from the opposite corner, and we just wanted to show that even though the media center lives at this ultimate end of the academic wing, there's still a strong connection back to all of the classes that sort of look into it or pass by it. So we have the ESL classrooms on the 3rd floor that when you're in them will sort of feel like they have a window to the outside, but they have a view into the media center. And then similarly, these are the windows in the makerspace that we were showing previously. We also provided some additional spaces within the media center that can double as flexible learning rooms, reading rooms, conference rooms that exist right under the framed out structure there in those 3rd floor spaces. We are thinking of carpeting in the media center just for acoustic purposes, and so it feels a little more comfortable. And then lastly, we have the gym. Just wanted to show that, as everyone knows, we are planning on a full-size gym, and much like the rest of the school, there will be some exposed structure. We're going back and forth coordinating with our structural engineers on how we want the bracing to appear, whether it be like this X, or maybe it takes on a different shape, but continuing those ideas of just exposing the structure and breaking everything out into a lot of logical geometries. We also have in the cost estimate all of the gym equipment and wood flooring. So that's been accounted for as well. And then this is just looking back from the opposite corner, and much like the media center, there's a few opportunities from the academic corridors to look down into that space. And then this is a typical construction document that's just showing, again, some of the detailing that we're looking into. This happens to be the lower learning commons. So we're considering where we want some of the projection screens to go and the small group spaces, what finishes we're using on the bleacher type seating, where the railings are, where the acoustic treatments are. And then we've actually rendered that space. So this is looking from the second floor as you're coming across that corridor there down onto the stadium-like seating, and you can see that there's some exposed structure, but it's ultimately pretty open, pretty bright. We're continuing that idea of the spaces above having the ability to look down into the space, but also providing a lot of natural daylight. There's a few elements like the operable glass door that I think will be really great to incorporate and connect to back to the outside. But we also wanted to show that the space could be used for presentations if we wanted to incorporate a projection screen, or closing off the amount of daylight for presentations with an operable shade. And that was everything we had for Hosmer.
I had one question back on one of the slides about in the, sorry. Talked about a translucent film on the glass,
Oh, sure.
and I'm wondering why, is that a film that's placed on the glass after installation, and why you wouldn't be using like a frosted type of glass instead for the, I'm not sure how long the use would be, and if you could clarify that for me?
Sure, yeah, so typically it would be a film that's applied to the glass afterward, and by it being a film, it's usually more cost-effective than providing a frosted glass, but it also gives us the opportunity to have kind of a wider range of patterns or design options. It doesn't have to be completely solid, so just sort of a way to incorporate transparency without it feeling really closed off.
We could definitely etch that, though. Sometimes we're asked to do it permanently in certain areas, particularly if it's pretty vulnerable. So you could do it either way. It's obviously more expensive to etch it, but sometimes in vulnerable areas, we specify it as etched in lieu of doing the film.
Yeah, I just have some concerns on that, but
Are
Paul, you had a question?
we doing it decorative or for solar glare? In the gymnasiums, we got 2 gymnasiums that are going to have a south wall that are going to get a lot of solar glare.
Right. For something like the gymnasium, we have a lot of that sun treatment on the exterior with the overhangs and the sun shading. But in the interior spaces, it would be more decorative just for privacy purposes.
Okay.
I should point out that all of the interior glass that you're seeing, we are planning for hollow metal frames versus an interior storefront, just to be more cost-effective, but also more durable.
Elodia?
2 questions, Julie. Putting the kids' personal belongings on the outside of the classroom, maybe I'm crazy, but do you have any security concerns? Because I see 10-year-olds walking around with $300 cell phones. So how does that work out? And fancy ski jackets and all that jazz. And as far as utilities go, I know that you weren't in that presentation, and I don't know if you can help me out, Mark or Dee Dee. There was one firm that talked about these, was it called sun tunnels? Where all the utilities were run there, so it gave a very clean shot to get to things and opened up the ceiling space.
But that was in a case where he was using, instead of using a drop ceiling.
Yeah.
And there's nothing, I haven't seen anything here where they would be using a drop ceiling. He was using that to maximize the space.
Right.
And run
It was
them like where we
kind of a
have our.
utility run that was attractively done, that cleaned everything. So it was a very fascinating concept. I'm probably not getting it. There was a lot of information in these presentations, but I'm just wondering. But if you could address the issue of personal belongings and security and stuff, because it puts a lot on the school then to have to deal with that.
Well, there are really two zones. There's a storage zone in the classroom where every student has a cubicle, and that's where lunches or cell phones or valuables would go. And then there's the zone in the hallway where bigger, more bulky items that that the teachers don't want in the classroom will be located. Hopefully, you know, theft of those kinds of items would be pretty limited, but anything that was valuable would be in their storage area inside the classroom.
There will be the security throughout, the security cameras throughout and in each of the corridors as well, if that's a comfort,
Yep.
TD?
Yep. So just a little bit of background. Right now, the students currently, all of their belongings are kept outside. And there was a lot of discussion about whether it should be inside or outside. And I think the decision was inside and outside, primarily for what you just addressed, which was all those bulky things need to stay outside. They just take up way too much room and they're messy. But having that, you know, individual space inside, which is, I think, a benefit now that we don't have. So there was definitely a lot of discussion about where the students' belongings were going to go.
John?
Just a couple of different questions. One on the gymnasium. Typically, elementary gymnasiums, you don't build in for any kind of seating space along the sides. It doesn't look like there is much there other than kind of walk around the basketball court. Is that?
That is correct.
Yeah.
And that's pretty typical for an elementary gym, you don't?
That is correct.
Okay. And then back from the beginning, so it looks like there's like at the entrances, there's kind of a double set of doors. The first one actually is, I mean, is this for security purposes, or the first one actually doesn't open into anything other than straight ahead into the next set of space?
Yeah, so that's essentially a weather-tight vestibule, so its purpose is just for somebody to come in to get out of the
Cold?
weather.
Okay.
And then when they move into the security vestibule, then they would move, you know, into the admin and have the permission to move throughout the school. But that first vestibule is essentially just to
Okay.
moderate the weather, yeah.
And then on doors, in a building like this, would you put automatic doors in some fashion, or would you stay away from that?
Meaning if they can automatically unlock them or not?
Well, not unlock them, but motion would open them up.
Oh, gotcha.
Yes, we'll have to have one door like that.
For handicap?
For handicap, but to trigger it, like if there's a button there or something. But I'm thinking just in general, or you don't do that in elementary schools, I don't know.
No, the doors would be secured electronically, if that's what you mean. And so they'd have to be released by somebody to get, well, all of them will have electronic release on it. So the set on the very outside, right at the exterior of the building, if you want to, they can be locked down because we will do intercom system there. But if you want to allow people to come through that first set of doors and get into this area that Julie's describing, you can allow that to be open so that they can get to here, but they can't get through this next pair of double
Right.
doors without coming through the office.
I think what he was getting at was, you know how when you walk into CVS, the door opens?
Oh, like motion sense?
Yes.
Yes, motion sensitive.
We typically wouldn't, only for, again, conserving energy.
Right.
So then anybody walking by, the door won't just open and let the heat out.
I mean, I can see that, for someone walking into the building, they're gonna have to go through 3 sets of doors to get into the building, which, I don't, after a while, get kind of old, it seems to me, but.
It's pretty common now
Pretty
with the
common,
high
I
level of
suppose so.
security, yeah.
I suppose so.
It's unfortunate, but.
And then the last question I had, back on this, the rendering, so I'm just maybe forgetting the basics here, but is the, whatever we're calling the kind of large foyer area between the V, if you will, is there a ceiling on that, or is that open? I thought it was open. Or is it enclosed?
Into this courtyard area?
Yeah, up to the top where it's blue. No, yeah. Inside.
No, it's outside.
So within the learning.
No, not in there, outside,
Oh.
above the tree, yeah.
Yep,
right
so
there.
that's just the sky.
That's the sky.
Yeah, so it
So
will be
that's
open
open.
to above, yeah.
So that entire area is open?
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
you're looking into the academic courtyard between the early childhood center and K to 5
And-
wings.
But I guess I'm a little confused, and so this looks like you can walk right in.
So in this image, we just have, this would be a bifolding overhead door. So we're just showing that that door is open right now. So you could have some sort of event where the courtyard can bleed right into that lower learning commons, essentially.
So it's a large kind of garage
Glass
door
wall.
Yep,
type thing that would,
right.
all right. Where's it gonna go when it's open?
It stacks up.
Oh, it stacks up, I see, folds up, I see.
Yeah, it has a
Okay.
hinge.
Yeah, okay. All right, thanks.
Paul?
I have a small list. We've answered a lot of the questions that I had, but are we planning, most of them are on the gymnasiums, are we planning on divider curtains in the gymnasiums? I don't see them there. I just know they're a big ticket item.
We
if we're
did
gonna
include
price them,
that in
okay.
the DD.
I didn't see it on the Hosmer Gymnasium, but on the Cuniff Gymnasium, well, I know we're going to get to it, it shows the teacher space and the marker board hard surface in the crash zone behind the basketball net. I just think it should go left or right, and there should be pads behind the net to make sure that that's placed right. And the HVAC systems for the gymnasium, are they going to be rooftop, penthouse, inside?
They will be, yeah, they'll be
the roof?
on the roof, yep.
Okay.
We actually have a strategy in the plan where they're coming into the gym at the perimeter, so we're able to run the supply and return around the edge without it conflicting with.
So all the motors and everything will be above. Great. I'm not sure about a kitchen in the main office. I think you push it to the back, but I still think there needs to be some sort of divider
Yeah.
so that we don't see all of that. And then carpet, you call out sheet vinyl, but you don't call out carpet. Are we talking carpet squares or sheet carpet?
Yeah, carpet tile.
It's got carpet tiles, okay.
It's actually really hard to find sheet carpet anymore. The
Good. That's a good
manufacturers
thing.
seem to completely be going tile.
And the last thing I have is, it might be more for the educators, the doors into the classroom, just seems like there's an awful lot of glass. When we're talking lockdown and getting in a classroom, you got a big piece of glass on the door, and then you've got a side panel with glass. That, I'm not sure what we're looking for as far as classroom security, but to me, that seems like a lot of glass.
Sure, it's a conversation that we are constantly having with school administration, not just the administration in Watertown, but all over, because you want, the research shows that you want that transparency, you want students to be able to sort of see other students and see the activity in the classroom, and you don't want it to feel isolated, but at the same time, you want the security. In all these classrooms, we do have a zone where students can get to and be out of view of that. That's why the classrooms are sort of notched and the way the angles work in the classroom. But we have done more glass than that, and we've done less glass than that. But we, in talking about it with the staff and administration so far, we're kind of a balance in the middle on all of these classrooms, where we don't have as much maybe as we've done in a lot of schools, but more than has traditionally been done, where you just had sort of maybe a single door with one window in it.
Okay, great, thank you.
Anyone else? John?
I just want to second the comment I think Paul made about, I thought it was odd to have the kitchen stuff kind of so visible in the office.
Yeah.
And I don't know, principals may have different feelings on that, but I would hide that a little bit if it were me. But
Yeah, we've actually had that same conversation this morning, and we've already moved it, so.
Lindsay?
Just to say just a little bit about like school security and stuff, a lot of people in the schools and teachers are going through a lot of training about school safety and security, and there The practice is really now, there's very few situations where you would want to actually lock down and hide in a classroom. And it's not recommended anymore, and a lot of people think about school safety and the original implications from the 90s about what kids were asked to do, and that's not how it is anymore. And so that has really modernized. And so when folks get fearful about glass, it's a little bit misinformed in terms of actual strategies that schools are using to keep kids safe. So I think just kind of keeping in mind how that protocol has changed for schools and how teachers, administration, students are preparing for tragedies like that. It's not how a lot of people perceive it to be. So open visibility and sight lines are more important than places to hide. So.
Leo?
This may be secondary, and it may just be for the academics as well. Is there any talk about enhanced digital access for the art rooms or the makerspace? I'm just wondering, connectivity, do children at this age, are they starting to embrace, pads more and thus doing digital art, or is it all still primarily, tangibles?
We're designing for both. They absolutely are starting to use, electronic media and digital technology as part of the art training from literally K to 12 now. So we would assume that both would need to be available.
Yeah, I really appreciate the projector, marker board, and certainly the wall. I was wondering if there's even more wall space that we can utilize.
Make available for digital.
Yeah.
We haven't had the, on both the Cuniff and the Hosmer, we haven't had the chance to get to that level of detail in some of the specific spaces, but it certainly is a conversation that we'll have.
And then regarding the makerspace, are there any special exhausting requirements or anything at this age that you're anticipating? Is it more mechanical manipulatables, or is it other things like, I guess, getting into soldering or other?
Yeah, that more active, the kind of activities that would require exhaust generally start at middle school.
Okay.
We haven't done that in elementary school.
Great, thanks.
We are including a kiln in the art room that we have being exhausted, but I didn't mention that when we were looking at it, but that lives kind of right around the corner from the entry to the art room, so.
Great.
An additional hands-on learning area.
Wonderful.
Maureen, please step up to the microphone, sorry.
Hi, I'm Maureen Foley from Winthrop Street. I just went online and looked at the sheet metal, and sheet vinyl, and I realized it's in all these hospitals, so if it can take that durability, it'll take it in elementary school. And it's pretty cool, the designs they were showing online. My question was interior perspective entry experience. I don't know, can the walls have some sound barrier or something? It looks like it's, how you designed everything to be wide and fluid and straight. Is it going to be a huge sound barrier, when a lot of noise as you walk into that entranceway? Because in other areas you showed ceilings and things in the upper part of the walls that had sound absorbing material. I really don't see it in the entrance hall. Is that going to, could the walls have some of that sound absorbing? Am I wrong?
No, yeah, so we can, actually have an acoustic consultant who's been reviewing a lot of the drawings so far, and we're waiting for some feedback from them, but they will ultimately let us know, hey, this space typically has a reverberation of X amount. We would recommend that you incorporate 2,000 square feet of acoustic panel on the wall.
Yeah, because it just seems like it's wide open and I could hear kids. All right. I don't think I have any other questions. Thanks.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, hold on. Pat up, step up, Pat.
Pat Rathbone. I may be a little out of it at this point, but have you talked about kitchen? I heard mention of a kitchenette, but have you gone into any detail on that yet?
We haven't talked about kitchen yet. When we get all of the cost estimating done for design development, there are a couple of decisions actually related to the kitchens in all of the schools that the building committee will have to make. One is, at this point in time, for example, we are not incorporating into the kitchens a tray wash, but we have a cost for that. And
You're
so
not?
We're not.
In what? Not incorporating what?
A tray wash area, for example. None of the schools have it now, but we've got items like that on our list. And we do have detailed layouts in the design development drawings for all 3 of those kitchens. And they're much more significant kitchens than the elementary schools have now, but we haven't reviewed those designs. We haven't presented those designs publicly. The documents are public, but we haven't talked about them in this forum.
So I guess my concern was an interest in dishwashers and things that will reduce the use of disposables, composting, recycling, and dishwashers.
Sure. It's a complicated discussion because, for example, our lead consultant has asked us if we're going to have it because you get penalized for it from a water use standpoint. So it will be one of those things that we'll have to decide how we're going to balance that. Okay. Just on the kind of exterior, this is the rendering that was presented back in May. And this is the current status of Cuniff. And although it's a slightly different view, obviously, because there's more information than in this particular perspective than there is in this one, because the building is skewed away from you. In fact, we felt like it made the student dining area and the service area at the rear of the building look almost too prominent based on this perspective. So this is certainly a different perspective, but it also involves a lot of subtle adjustments in interior or in exterior materials, in that we have the Prodema, or the wood appearing material, on these areas, and then we have the metallic aluminum composite material on the silver areas. And then we've gone ahead and added some sun shading devices. These are actually vertical sun shading devices on the classroom area. And they help to break up the wood. We've played around with, for example, the adjustment in the size of the reveals. These represent aluminum reveals that break up those wood panels. We've also made quite a few adjustments to the student dining area. You can see that it has the Prodema wood material up high and then the stone down low. And then we've done a lot of work to try to bring the stone around the entire base of the building. So you're seeing it down low across the entire building now, not just across this section and not just across the front section, but also across that student dining area. There are a lot of subtle adjustments to datum lines and windows, but those are things you wouldn't typically pick up. We've made a couple of more subtle adjustments to the entry area to get some scale to the window in this location and wrap it around the corner and get the sunshades on that. And then quite a few subtle adjustments to the size scale of the window opening in the corner, on the corner of the building. A lot of it's very subtle, but there are pretty significant changes in our mind to the overall building composition from this side. Any questions specifically related to the adjustments in that image?
Leo?
I just have a question about this main Pradima facade. What are these silver lines?
The line, Leo, the line, for example, here,
Yeah, I think that's more of like horizontal datum that's going around the building, right? But I'm talking about these secondary ones. Are these mechanical fastening devices for the actual Pradima panels?
they're not. They're aesthetic, so certainly they're subject to adjustment. They're an aluminum reveal that's occurring in that panel on the vertical lines of the mullions of the glass below.
I see.
But we're constantly we've made subtle adjustments to those a number of times. So certainly, if you have any thoughts or critique related to those, it would we'd find that valuable.
I just wanted to understand it. Thank
Sure.
you.
Okay.
Yeah, and you said these are vertical baffles. Is that right? Is that what this is?
They are on the academic wing. These are sunshades, which act as vertical sun baffles for those classroom windows.
And am I wrong in the academic wing? Did the windows get smaller?
They're slightly more narrow.
Okay.
Yeah, they're slightly more narrow. Part of that is because as we're into construction documents and as we got to the end of DD, we were making subtle adjustments to make sure the lengths of the Pradima material that we were dealing with were all in modules, so we were being as efficient as possible with the material. So we did make some subtle adjustments to those.
Oh, okay. I was wondering what was driving that and whether it was solar heat gain on certain sides of the building or whether it's good to know how you were doing it. Okay, thanks.
Can I ask you a question?
Lindsay?
I just had a question about, I really like how both schools look. I think that there's a lot of comparisons between the two, but they still look different. I'm just curious about the committee's opinion about how much we want the two schools to look the same or look different on the outside. Like, I mean, it could even be like the color choice for the wood material being chosen would make the buildings look much more different or much more the same. And so I'm just kind of curious what people's thoughts are about, do we want the schools to match or do we not? Because right now they seem, I don't know what the right adjective, but they seem kind of like in harmony together. Like they look kind of similar, but some features make them stand. I'm just kind of curious what other people think.
I mean, is this a language that we're establishing for the town?
I think certainly both of them have a similar language in that they're using the same materials. And now there'll be some benefits to that, both financially and maintenance-wise, to have them be the same materials. As Lindsay points out, if you wanted the typical observer to feel that they were more different, the reality is you could choose a different color for the metallic material and a different shade for the wood. And I think someone who's not constantly looking at buildings might then think they're very different all of a sudden. Although to us as architects, we might not see them as being all that different. So there's certainly an opportunity, if there's a desire to make them have a more different appearance, to adjust the color scheme slightly.
Yeah, I don't really have a preference either way. Like, I like the way they look. I'm just curious if people like that they're more similar than different. We just haven't talked about that now that we've kind of seen a more final look.
The use of I would point out the use of the material is quite different in that we don't really break down the Hosmer in this way. On the Cuniff, it's a smaller building. We broke down the scale of this academic piece by inserting the wood in this area and then breaking it. And we don't do that as much on the Hosmer. And then certainly even this corner piece and the scale of that is different than the Hosmer. On the Hosmer, on the Mount Auburn Street side, we're trying to produce a much more symmetrical facade, where here that wasn't important. So to us as architects, we think they have a similar vocabulary, but we think they're quite different. But you could certainly make some really subtle adjustments in the selection of the final colors and make them look more different.
Leo,
I just
yes.
want to make sure that I understand this rendering a little bit better.
Oh, sure.
Is this, it looks to me, oh yeah, clearer now. This is the identical academic language that appears on the other side of the building, right?
It
So
is.
you have the silver volume with the wood accent in that main.
That is correct, Leo.
Okay, so this is primarily this wood aesthetic only at this corner. Doesn't wrap over.
That is correct.
And then how about the backside?
The backside borrows some of that, although that is the gymnasium, and we take the stone-based datum line around that. And then you can see the vocabulary, well, it doesn't really show up that well in that image. But that's what goes around the back. We could show an image, we could certainly bring an image of the back. That would probably be the best way to demonstrate that. Keep in mind, and again, as I said with the lull, we never say, don't worry about this facade because it's going to be covered with trees. But we should point out that the truth is this facade would have a significant amount of foliage covering it up because we are keeping the existing trees. We've just deleted them out of this image so that you can see right through to the building.
Leo?
Is there a hierarchy in cost between the stone, the Perdima, and the metal? Is the Alucobond less than the Perdima?
Good question. We had the exact same question, and the cost estimates show they're very similar.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're very similar.
Thanks.
Okay. Move on.
And again, just to save my voice, I'm going to ask Mike to just talk a little bit about where each of the spaces, where we're looking from. This is an older June view, and that's the fully rendered view. So.
Thank you. So yeah, as Scott mentioned, early in June 19th, we showed this space on the second floor right outside the art room and media center / learning commons. We consider this a breakout space or a collaboration space for the students, but also to use as a display space for potentially the art room. So some comments that were made when we showed this slide, excuse me, was how the soft seating didn't really interact with this display portion, or how the collaboration area didn't feel as integrated to the design as it should have felt. So our first real pass at achieving those comments were to integrate a more simple, sleek design that could act as book storage or student storage in this collaboration space, which you could see. I'm talking about this area. But also a space that could double as a storage, or sorry, as a display area for those art projects. A lot of the same finishes and material were mentioned in Hosmer, so if I repeat them, I apologize. But one of the main goals in both projects were to showcase the LEED and sustainability points. So some of the signage that you see, like this large vinyl graphic, would be I guess one of the drives of the branding of the school. That is a placeholder as of now, but we saw a nice opportunity to have this signage, whether it's a tree as shown, with some nice green terms or sayings, and that would run from the first floor to the second floor. The railings that you see would be an open space to the lobbies below.
Just that, Mike mentioned branding and signage. We have a specific consultant that will help us work with the staff and administration to come up with some of the themes and some of the ideas. So if we show something that's a graphic or some lettering or some signage in some of these renderings, whether it be the black and white ones or the color ones, it really is a placeholder. I mean, it may ultimately get adopted, but many of them are placeholders. And then we'll begin in about 2 months working through what those themes are and exactly what those graphics are in many locations.
It's also important to note, too, that while the finish of the floor is changing, that would all be the sheet vinyl, too. The next space we were looking at was the corridor. This too was presented on June 19th, showcasing how we would implement the structure more than just a way to hold up the building, but rather to help educate the students on the tectonics of the building itself and how we could integrate that with the storage. So again, very similar to Hosmer, we are introducing the metal mesh benches with some sort of frame around that bench for durability and cleanliness.
Can I ask, before you move from that slide, what is the structure hanging from the ceiling that kind of looks like an
Right in the
HVAC
middle.
foundation?
This space right there.
Yeah, down below that, what is all of that?
As of now, we have it as a light gauge metal structural frame. Again, as storage. This zone would be a collaboration zone. So that would just be an area for storage or display, a way to break down the space. Once you drop the ceilings, it'll psychologically, it slows down the volume, it slows down the flow of traffic, and it just emphasizes that that's a space that people would sit and focus and talk and
And
collaborate.
that's a storage shelf, essentially, for books or materials or things the students may be working on at that table.
Okay, it's just the way that fifth grade is looking at it. It says to me, climb on me.
That was a comment that was made in the office as well.
It's a
yeah.
little high for that, but I suppose if you use the table, you could get to it.
And also there would be the security cameras throughout too, so hopefully if someone does jump up there, we could catch them and they won't do it again. Also, piggybacking off what Julie said about the wall coverings, the blue shaded wall that you see behind the bench would also be that wall vinyl, or the sheet vinyl, just to provide more durability. So if it was just a gypsum wall, it wouldn't be as dinged up or scratched. This would be another slide that we showed on June 19th, showing a reading area. This is the third floor looking towards the staircase that would connect to the gymnasium, so looking south. The comment that was made during this slide was that it looked very busy and not obtainable, essentially. So our attempt to clean it up and simplify the design, but to keep it fun and energetic, was to push it back into the wall, open up the corridor more, and provide essentially a larger collaboration area, while not reducing any of the storage needs that the students may have. This is a look that you haven't seen yet, a view that you haven't seen yet. This is looking towards the gymnasium lobby on the first floor. It's important to note that two of the staircases in Cunniff would be open staircases. So we wanted to highlight this void that theoretically is running the entire height of the building. In this area, we were showing that underneath the second run of the staircase, in order to increase the use while providing cane detection, we can implement some sort of soft seating or hard seating area underneath the bench. And again, this is just showcasing views into the gymnasium on the right, and then on the left would be the student dining area, all the while having the visible structural elements. This is a look from the other side of the gymnasium lobby, looking back to essentially where we were just standing, showing more seating opportunities, showing more visible structural elements, but also, most importantly, the connection from the first to second floor, and how open it would actually feel. This is a look into the gymnasium with a wall pad that is noted as teaching station with marker board, along with some opportunity for applied graphics, whether it's on the glazing, whether it's frosted or etched like Scott was mentioning, but also highlighting the structural elements. We talked about, earlier we talked about how we're still talking with our structural engineer, trying to really finalize the shape and the location of the braces. So what you see is what is currently in the model, but it's not what would be in the end. And this also is a full-size gym, as you know.
One of the challenges is we now utilize a building information model for all of the drawings, and all the documentation on a project now is in a building information model. We no longer draw things kind of sheet by sheet, and the only reason I mention that is because with the model, anytime we take renderings or drawings like this, we're just getting a snapshot in progress. And so something like that marker board can be floating in the wrong location at that snapshot, and it looks real, or some things look real when they're in the process of being resolved. So it's really changing the way we do drawings. I miss the way we used to do drawings, but because I started with a pencil when there were no computers. But it's fascinating the way the technology works, because every single drawing you see is in a giant electronic model, and that we're just taking snapshots of the model. And so sometimes you'll see elements where a piece of structure or a beam doesn't connect to anything. It's because it just hasn't been finished in the model, and all we're looking at is that unfinished model. Until it's 100% complete, we wouldn't have all those things in there.
And also, like Paul asked earlier, this gym would also have the divider curtain. This would be the view standing from the entry point, looking back towards the southern wall. Same opportunity for school branding, whether it's a logo, school colors, in the wall pads or on the floor itself. Next, we were looking at the kindergarten classroom. This is the secondary teaching wall. Again, both primary walls would have a teaching zone. The primary teaching wall would have the interactive projector with marker board and tack board surfaces. This is looking at the secondary teaching wall, which would have the marker board closer to the floor to allow students to sit on a carpet and utilize that lower marker board. That's one thing we heard quite often during some of the earlier programming meetings. And then on the back right, you have a reading nook with book storage underneath. That was another element that we heard quite often during programming meetings, to allow a quiet zone where a student or two or three could use to focus or to read or to do small group projects. And again, there's a sink in every classroom with bottle filling capabilities. This would be a look at an upper class, meaning 1st through 5th. Same secondary teaching wall. The only real difference in this would be the implementation of the small group rooms, which you see on the right. One thing that is important to note is the sight lines into that small group room, which we kind of already covered, where there'd be shades or some sort of privacy acting element that we could put on there. But the way that we design the rooms, whether they have small clusters as these tables shown, or if they organize them more in lecture format, the idea is to have the primary teaching wall essentially off of screen where we are, so students wouldn't be looking into that room. They would be focusing on the opposite room from that window. And I'm sorry if I glazed over any details. I didn't want to repeat too often any finishes that were mentioned before.
Questions? Amy?
Thank you. So the secondary vestibule, we've got a picture of it here, where it goes into the gym, if you go back. So I think we had talked at the last meeting that secondary vestibule that comes in would be used for getting into the gym after hours, say when voting and stuff, and that stairwell was going to be closed in to enable it to be closed and locked from a security standpoint. Do you remember that discussion?
We talked about it at the Hosmer, where once you got up a stair, you couldn't get in any other part of the building. The Conif is a little different. We could introduce elements to achieve that, but the Cuniff in general, because it's a smaller school, is a more open school, so the hallways are a little wider, and even when you get upstairs, it's a little wider. So the way it's set up now, you could come into this public space, and if you were so inclined, even though you weren't supposed to, you could go up that stair and get to the second floor. If we need to take a look at elements to stop that, we certainly could. Any elements that stop that would close down some of the openness that we're creating in the Cuniff.
Lindsay?
This is just sort of a really small point. Back at the collaboration areas in the corridor, you know, the elements that I thought that made them really inviting, made kids want to use it, was actually the round areas. And I feel like I like how in the newer version, how it's more open. But, so in this one, I like that it's more open, but it feels like the kids would be sitting in a bookshelf rather than sitting in a place that's meant for reading and collaborating and enjoying the space. And so I feel like we've lost a little bit of that in that particular version of it. And also same thing like in the classrooms with the reading nooks, you know, when they're so square, it doesn't feel as inviting as the rounder features that we've seen before.
Sure. The nooks is a good point. We could certainly take a look at that, Lindsay. In this space, I think we are not showing it because we want to just show you the change in the actual physical space. But you would definitely want to introduce some soft seating into this area and make it look more like a comfortable place for students.
Thanks.
Before we were building in this object, this physical object that was a little imposing and hard to navigate around. So by moving that same thing to the exterior wall, we now are thinking that you would introduce a lot of soft seating. In the Cuniff in particular, because it's a smaller school, they're not really even corridors. They're sort of an extension of the learning commons. That space is fairly wide, so the selection of furniture in there and the soft seating versus hard seating in those areas is going to make a lot of the feel in those areas, and especially with color and texture and things like that. So that'll be an important part of those.
Yeah, and I know we're not talking about floor patterns and colors, but the ones that we've seen in here so far, I think are awesome. Like, I really like the wood that kind of blends in to separate something that kind of looks really homey and comfortable, in the way the floor patterns are kind of defining spaces to use. It looks neat for this one.
I think it would be important because we're currently, and we can change it at any point in time, but we're currently proceeding with sheet vinyl. But if there is an interest in any of the committee members touring some spaces, either on your own or with us, to make decisions related to that, we chose the sheet vinyl just based on the collective feedback we've gotten on prior projects. But we certainly don't want to suggest that we're not open to any other products. So if there's an interest in taking a look at some buildings, facilities that you may know of or that we may have done, we're certainly open to doing that.
Back to what Lindsay's concern was on that seating area with where you just changed, could that seat or that sitting area come out a little bit to make it a little more differentiated than just being part of the wall system? That might soften it up a little bit.
And like we're envisioning.
Not an architect, though.
We're envisioning, you know, maybe there's some soft seating flowing on this side, and maybe you even put a little some low soft seating in the middle. When it comes time to select some furniture, maybe even before then, so you can see the space in context, we can show you some examples of spaces that are really well done in terms of introducing that kind of homey, soft seating.
Any other questions, John?
Couple of questions kind of down near the gymnasium area. One is just between the gymnasium and the student dining. Did you do anything extra there in terms of sound barrier between those two?
Yeah, our acoustic engineer, again, they've been reviewing the documents, and although it's hard to tell here, there would be double stud walls there, which would help quite significantly. But yeah, they will be making recommendations on additional wall treatments.
And there's a second question in the student dining area, the platform area?
Yep.
Is that permanent, or is that something that could be moved?
It'd be permanent.
It's only a one-step rise though, because we see it as an extension of the dining area, and we want students to be able to dine in that area also, because in an elementary school, when you think about it, it really doesn't make sense that that entire area would just be a stage that's only used a handful of times a year. So we want it to be a little bit of a rise, so it could be used as a stage, but we think of it more as an extension of the dining area.
So like if they did a school assembly for some, whatever number of students, they could incorporate that into sitting on the lower space. I mean, that, to make it more functional.
Right.
Makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. And then the last question is, and you, well, is actually that one, that you picture that you have up there now. Are you comfortable with the space that that the adult and the child is standing in? I mean, it's a secondary vestibule, so you don't anticipate a huge amount of traffic, but I can imagine it even though it's secondary, it may get used quite a bit. And I look on this, and it seems tight, that space there between of where they're standing, and whether that becomes a bottleneck if there's too many people walking through there.
We could certainly take a look at that. I was recollecting that it was a full quarter width through there, but we could certainly take a look at it, what that dimension is.
We've got the angle of the gym that comes out there,
Right,
so
sure.
cuts some of it off, but.
Right.
So I'm actually looking at the floor plans. You know how I am about floor plans. So I'm looking at the second floor of the Cuniff, and I know everything can get moved, but we're getting to the place where people are really looking at these documents. And I would like to relabel on the second floor, having 3 grade 2 classrooms, because right now, just as we had at the Hosmer, basically all of grade 2 through 5 is on the 3rd floor, which is very far away from the principal's office in the main center of the school. And I know that can be done very easily. I'm just saying that I think it should be done as we move forward to publicly produce these documents, so we get that sense. There's 3 classrooms there that can easily be moved upstairs and swapped out for the grade 2s. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then, just a question on this same page. What is the swirly thing above the student dining? So there's a swirly thing. We're just kind of curious as to what that
It's on the
is.
second floor page. And it's not on the first floor page. It's white.
Just curious.
It's like,
Oh, it's above the student dining, that
Yes.
area.
Yep.
Okay, that, again, being a 3-dimensional model, when we cut the floor plans, that's just showing the soffit above the student platform.
Okay.
So it's not a true proscenium opening, but it gives this sense that this would be a stage. So it's just a lower ceiling in that one area, that's all.
Fabulous. Just curious.
So, yeah.
Thanks.
Any other questions, comments? Scott, anything further?
I think that's it.
Oh, Jimmy, please step up.
Yeah, Jimmy Mello. I noticed this with the Hosmer, but I picked up on the color picture of the kind of, where you show this building structure, like in the hallway. Is that actually like a piece of iron?
It is.
Now, what concerns me is where it's over where kids would be putting their coats. I'm just wondering, and kids can be running around and stuff, and one kid slammed into that. I'm just wondering if that's a good place for that to be. I like the idea of having it, but I'm wondering where people will be more active. I can just picture a kid not paying attention and boom, you know?
I mean, it's no different in our mind. Like for decades, we've done schools that were concrete block and had concrete block in the hallways. Like, it's no different in our, it's not as if it's out in a passageway or a walkway. It's over there in that storage area to the side. So we've got it out of the way, if you will, and it really is about exposing. Julie and Mike use the word tectonics, which is more of an architectural term, but it literally means just exposing the way the building is constructed and the elements of the building in a way that allows the students to learn that there really are components that hold up the building and that they don't have to be hidden behind the walls. And that's kind of a theme throughout both Hosmer and Conniff.
Okay, I didn't notice it in the black and white that much, but I did on the color one, so, but I understand.
Anyone else? Leo?
I just have a follow-up to that because I noticed the structure is also exposed in the classrooms. Is that restricting your duct pathways or anything?
No, in the class, but it did make designing the HVAC systems a little bit more complicated, although in the end, the duct runs are shorter. But in those classrooms, we just have, we have the heat pump cassettes, so those go in the center bay, and then the return air ventilation for those spaces just comes from the corridor into the classroom and stops. So all the air exchange is occurring right inside the door, so we don't have duct runs inside the classroom itself. So we were able to eliminate those, and then we don't need to cross over between those beams. We'll need to cross over with like sprinkler pipes, but we've confirmed that we'd be able to bore the necessary holes to do that across those beams.
Oh, okay. So the major crossovers would be bored through the structure itself. And as far as surface conduits and other things, they're not dropping below in any sort of wire molds, right? They're also passing through?
We would do conduit, we would do electrical and any kind of conduit with the bored holes, and then we would do the sprinkler system with the bored holes.
And so the structure itself, is that intumescent paint, or how are you protecting the steel?
Unprotected.
Unprotected,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
just exposed inside the building?
Unprotected.
Great.
Our building type allows us to be unprotected.
Great.
Brian?
Brian Haybison, Worcester Street in Watertown, also a member of the Energy and Environment and Energy Efficiency Committee. Just a couple of quick comments. One was, I was kind of surprised to hear about how much you're planning on using vinyl flooring and the fact that you mentioned that in the context of LEED. There's a lot of concerns about vinyl flooring in terms of the manufacture of vinyl flooring, in terms of the potential, and there's both positive and negative studies about the actual direct effects of vinyl flooring on the occupants of buildings, and especially children. But there's definitely some health concerns about the occupants of buildings from vinyl flooring. And then also the disposal of vinyl flooring, and also issues in terms of if there's a fire, the toxic gases that can be produced from vinyl flooring. So I was just kind of interested to hear of if you're looking at other types of flooring that might be more environmentally sound, like bamboo, cork, ceramic. You shuddered when I said that. I know some of these may not be appropriate for particular situations, but I'm just saying as options for different situations. And I know there are pros and cons for all these different kinds of flooring, but I'm just wondering, just in general, if you might have other options that might be more appropriate than vinyl flooring for these particular situations.
Sure. I mean, I think that, and the vinyl flooring technology is much different even than it was 5 years ago.
It has improved.
LEED would not be acknowledging the environmental product declarations and the health product declarations on vinyl if it was the same product, that it was 5 and 10 years ago. So the only vinyl manufacturers that we've looked at are ones that would meet their requirements. That having been said, the options are really sheet vinyl or linoleum, or going back to an older technology of vinyl, what we know of as a vinyl composition tile, which is the square 12 by 12 tiles that have been used for years. Those aren't as, those don't have EPDs and HPDs on them, so we're not looking at those because we desperately need those lead points for materials and resources. So it really is, and other products, like, the reason I showed it is because you mentioned bamboo, and I love bamboo, but you don't, there's no product available that would last very long in a school.
Durability,
that
yeah.
It's made like that. But it would be a great product if it was like a residential use. So when it comes to commercial use, unless you did, you know, a very super expensive, and all of these products are in, let's say, the $7 to $10 per square foot range, which is a great budget price point for a school because it buys you a lot of quality, but it doesn't break your budget. And unless you were going to go to something that got, you know, double or triple that, you really wouldn't be able to get away from either sheet vinyl or linoleum. So for that reason, it seems like on all of our schools now, it's kind of a discussion between those two products or defaulting back to an older technology like vinyl composition tile, which has been around for a long time.
Thanks. And between those two products, I would just echo some comments were made earlier about linoleum being apparently a slightly more benign product from an environmental standpoint, generally speaking. One other comment, have you looked at the glues and such that you're planning on using for attaching them? Because again, I've read briefly on this, and it seems like there are dry glues that can adhere that are less toxic than the wet glues.
Yes, absolutely. And we're not really even allowed to use a lot of some of those older technologies. Like a lot of the things you're reading about now are things that were utilized sort of 3 to 5 years ago. And everything we would use for a glue would have to be low VOC, non-toxic. Okay. We absolutely couldn't introduce any of those products now. The unfortunate thing about a lot of those products is they're not as good as from, you know,
durability standpoint?
Yeah, from a durability standpoint as the more dangerous products we used to use. But they are good products and they are safe products, and that's what we'll definitely have to use in the building.
Okay, and then, sorry, just one other comment I wanted to make about, I just want to also echo the comments that Pat had made earlier about the kitchens in terms of, and comments that we had made earlier, requesting that you look as hard as you can at getting as much ability to do recycling and composting in those kitchens. And in terms of I just wanted to follow up on one point you mentioned about the water usage and LEED. As much as anybody would like to see us get as high rating as we can for LEED, I would not want to have the sort of tail wag the dog with this. I mean, the point of LEED is to have as environmentally responsible building as we can. And if we have to do that by doing something that's less environmentally responsible, I would think that would be something we wouldn't want to do. And I know these are, you know, judgment calls and trade-offs. In the Northeast, I think that water is less of an environmental concern than solid waste is overall. And again, you could look at the details of this, but I think that if we were in the Southwest, that you might look at water as an overriding concern, but in the Northeast, although we do have drought concerns, solid waste is a much larger concern, I think, at this time and for the foreseeable future. So I would strongly, from an environmental concern, be looking much more at the concern of solid waste.
Sure. I mean, and trust me, it makes absolutely no difference to us whatsoever whether the town and the building committee decide to do tray washing at all these buildings or not. We've heard the arguments. Those who believe that tray washing should not be included generally talk about the water use. They produce the reports on the composition of the trays that have to be utilized and how those impact the environment. And then they talk about how the disposables can all actually be recyclable, And then those who are for tray wash talk about, the waste and composting and those things. So I've heard fantastic debates on both sides. Makes absolutely no difference to us. We will have a chance to present the information we have to the building committee and maybe one of the toughest decisions they have to make. I don't know. We'll see. Because to this day, I'm not convinced one way or another, because I've heard such great arguments on both sides.
I understand there's a lot of trade-offs. I just want to make the point about the water versus the solid waste, at least. I think in the Northeast, solid waste is a much bigger concern, but.
I mean, I think that's a perfectly valid point, but I can tell you that LEED is pushing us to reduce water consumption on the building if we want to get our water and resource points.
Point taken. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Leo?
Just quick follow-up on the flooring question. Anywhere in Watertown currently school buildings, are we using linoleum? How about you, Paul? In your experience, your lengthy experience with the quantity of academic time that you've spent, have you used linoleum successfully? I know it's a very sustainable product, right? Linseed-based, jute backer. Everybody says you can get EPDs on them. It comes in a sheet product, but I haven't heard about it in this particular application having the long-term durability that we're looking for the schools, and I was wondering if you have heard of it being used successfully.
Not linoleum, no. The Marmoleum product that I talked about, which I know is a brand name, is
Yeah, that's
used
what I meant to say.
pretty-
Marmoleum. linoleum.
Marmoleum we used extensively in Newton and in many of our builds and renovations. And it worked great. Barring flooding or something like,
Yeah.
something like that.
I know it has some adhesion challenges and
The upkeep of the seams, they had to be welded, so it has to be a certified dealer that does that, so.
yeah, because they do expand and contract based on the humidity factor.
Right, and there's actually a welding, what they call a welding process to make those seams, especially in the design. But overall, I gave it a high rating.
Okay, so maybe that is a consideration for us. Great, thank you.
Hey, anyone else? We'll move on to our agenda. The next item would have been approval of invoices, but we don't have any invoices this evening to approve. And the next item is an update on the designer selection process for Watertown High School. And I will say that Scott now, Vivian,
Just before.
go like this, so I can see you, please.
Just before we move on to the thank you. Just before we move on to the high school, I do want to give an update that the commissioning RFP has been out, and the responses are due next week, Thursday, the 25th, by 3 o'clock. So hopefully, very soon after, we can review and make a decision to move forward with one of the agencies that have submitted, as well as a cost estimator has been released to review the documentation and prepare a second cost estimate for this project, reviewing all 3 elementary schools.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry. I'll do better next time. Back to our update, and I'm going to turn it over to Dee Dee.
Excellent, thank you very much. So yesterday, we attended the designer selection panel meeting at the MSBA. That was the second meeting, if you recall. The first meeting, we, as a group, all 16 of us, narrowed down the firms to 3 that were to be interviewed, and yesterday those firms were interviewed. The 3 firms were AI3, JCJ, and Jonathan Levy. So the town manager, Mark, and I attended the designer selection panel as members. We listened to 3 excellent interviews, presenting all sorts of great ideas around our high school. The designer selection panel deliberated and discussed the presentations, and then moved forward and rank ordered the 3 firms. And we're very, very excited to say that AI3 was the top ranked architectural firm to work forward with our high school project. I just want to thank, there were members of the community that attended, which was fabulous. I think that it showed that we have a very vested interest in ensuring that our projects are coherent and seamless, and that we're moving forward as best that we can. I think the presentations were fantastic, but I'll just say that for me, one of the comments that I had to make based on AI3's presentation was I felt what our buildings were going to look like. I felt the future for our students. I felt the innovation and the excitement and I just want it to happen. So we're just very pleased, and now moving forward, it's a matter of negotiating the contract, and then I think we'll be ready to move on to the feasibility study, which one of the first things in the feasibility study is to figure out where the high school is going to be, working on the visioning and the educational program. So those will happen in short order.
I just also want to add, being there, thanks to Elodia, Jimmy, Stacy, and Shirley, who's not here, for their continued to, and Paul, oh yes, I'm sorry, and Paul was there. Thank you for coming, and it was a little bit challenging, to say the least, but one comment that really stuck out in my mind was the fact that the chair of this committee made it a point in his comments to state that despite the fact that AI3 was working with us and had kind of an inside track, his quote was, "They did not skate through their presentation." And that was really telling to me, where the chairman, who sees these things all the time, it tells you how well-served the town of Watertown is now and is going to be through the high school process. So AI3, Scott, and your team, thank you for your presentation and what you did, and looking forward to a high school that's going to look different than these schools.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Nobody's more excited than we are. As you point out, the high school is a very different opportunity in that it represents not just a single neighborhood or a single neighborhood group, but the entire town. And there are certainly a lot of complicated issues surrounding how it's going to be sited, maybe even where it's going to be sited, but it's the most exciting opportunity in terms of that it services the entire town. And there's so many, in our presentation, as those who are there know, we talked about all the different groups that we need to engage in Watertown, how many professionals are in this town, you know, engineers, scientists, architects that we need to engage, how many different community groups, and how Watertown really sees a school project as not just a school project, but a town project where every single entity within the town should have, you know, should get everything they need and want out of the project as well. So it's super exciting for us. We certainly didn't take it for granted, because we think it's an amazing opportunity. So nobody's certainly more excited than we are. Thank you very much.
Thank you. John?
Just a brief comment. Although the building committee clearly has the authority here, just speaking on behalf of the school committee, also very excited about this opportunity, because it's a, although there are parts of our 1929 building that we like, but we're ready for a replacement. So we're looking forward to, as Dee Dee said, the educational plan, the feasibility study, which will be challenging, but then building a new school. It's very exciting for the community.
Anyone else? Seeing none, the next meeting will be on October 2nd, here in this room. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. Tom. Do me a favor.
Yeah, you get to stay later.
For the last, forever.